Ladies and gentlemen, day 194 of Russia's invasion. This is the 9th year of Russia's Federation war against Ukraine. My name is Andriy Shevchenko. On behalf of the team of Mediacentrу Ukraina, I welcome all the journalists telling the world about our struggle for freedom. With us now is Ihor Taburets, head of the Cherkasy Oblast military administration. We would like to discuss several questions, but I would start with the question that put Cherkasy in the news last week. Ukraine and the Cherkasy regional administration said they do not recommend the Hasidic Jews to plan celebrations of Rosh HaShanah in Ukraine and warned the Hasidic community, the Jewish community, on restrictions that will be in place. I will read how it was formulated officially on the Foreign Ministry of Ukraine website. Considering the threat to lives and safety, the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry calls on the Hasidic pilgrims to refrain from the celebrations of Rosh Hashanah in Ukraine. We understand that this was also the position of the Cherkasy Oblast military administration. Are these restrictions not too strict for the relatively peaceful Cherkasy region? You know, in our opinion, security is above all. Safety and security are above all. So I think to call this a strict restriction with regard to the faithful, to the Jewish uh, believers, I think it's an exaggeration. When we met with the leaders of their local foundation, we warned them that there's a war going on, and in spite of the fact that there are many willing to visit the grave of their tzaddik, of their leader, we tried to dissuade them in advance from thinking about coming this year. Of course, on their part, with their yearly tradition now, they told us that back in Israel, there's pretty much a constant war. They're accustomed to it. They don't much care. But right now, having looked at all the pros and cons, from people coming in, we decided to stress. We have to stress, just for the sake of both the military administration and the law enforcement bodies, we have to stress. We have to ask people not to come. We're not telling them categorically that we categorically oppose, because of course, some part of the faithful, they live in the territory of the Cherkasy region and the territory of Ukraine. It's not like everybody will be coming in from abroad. So they were there, and now when we officially, both the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, the Ministry for Culture, and the law enforcement bodies, we've consulted and we came out with this official statement to dissuade them from coming. And of course, we do tell them about the restrictions that will be applied to them, including because of the wartime situation and the restrictions on various gatherings and various movements. Pane Ihore, for international journalists, including Israeli journalists who are watching us now, could you explain what sort of threats we're looking at, why we ask people to refrain from coming this year? So, any kind of strengthened security measures, well, these days they have to do with the fact that there's a high threat, there's a high probability of missile strikes, including in the Uman area. We know that Uman was one of the most heavily hit at the start of the war from a massive missile attack, because the consequences from that strike, we're still dealing with the consequences of that early missile strike. That probability is high. There's also the probability of terrorist threats of different kinds, because we know that the enemy is mendacious, the enemy is unpredictable. We know what kinds of things they can do to the peaceful population. This is exactly what we have in mind when we say we have heightened security measures, because any gathering of people is potentially vulnerable to a missile strike and to a terrorist threat within the country. And we will, of course, add that the Russian security services and special services are also known in their attempts to bring in conflict between Ukrainians and Jews, and we have to minimize the risks in this situation. To switch to a different subject, yes, Uman really was a target on February 24th, on the first day of the invasion, after which the Cherkasy region was also an evacuation hub, and also it's moved many of its sons and daughters to the front, to the contact line. What's the feeling in the oblast right now? Well, as the center of Ukraine, we try to do our best to hold the line, and this has to do, of course, with morale and our patriotic spirit, patriotic feeling. Um, as a community, we're very resilient, and we really hope that all our fighters who are participating in the war with the enemy um, will also show this sort of resilience and courage um, in the fight with the enemy. Today, I congratulated our Paralympic champion. Uh, they were moved in 21 due to several reasons, probably COVID, and we at this international competition, one of our Cherkasy uh, sons of Cherkasy got the silver medal, and basically one of the people said we have to be the example of resilience and courage to each other, and convince the world that we will win no matter what. And um, having looked into that person's eyes, I am very proud and happy that Cherkasy remains patriotically resilient. Um, it's true that from the very start until this day, we have been and we remain a sort of hub for IDPs, for our internally displaced fellow citizens from the temporary occupied territories. Um, we've had over 200,000. We've hosted, or over 200,000 people have come in through our region, through our oblast. Um, we also have people registered and staying in our region, over 100,000 people, just the officially registered, registered in the social services and are in our territory. And additionally, of course, we're preparing new places. This is particularly relevant considering the start of the winterization, the winter season, and the heating season, which we expect to be difficult for Ukraine. We are doing our best. The residents of Cherkasy are very um, together. They're very friendly to this category of the people. They try to help them at all levels, starting from volunteers and the territorial communities, where our citizens, where we have such internally displaced citizens staying, and down to various organizations and social services working in this field, working very hard and very thoroughly with all the different problems. As head of the Oblast administration, what are your highest top priorities this week? Firstly, it really is the security measures for the coming festivities for the Jewish community. That's number one. And then in the next 2 weeks, we also there's a lot of processes because we've started the new school year. We're watching very closely the different measures taking place in schools, particularly different trainings, preparing the parents and the teachers, practical preparations during lessons, when especially when kids have now come in to study offline, and we really hope that we will soon be prepared for further schooling. Of course, like in all of Ukraine, we host numerous logistical events to prepare for winter, which is why today and the nearest few days we will be doing these inspections, going through all the different uh, heating institutions of the heating system, all different boarding schools, or where people with disabilities are staying, and on the medical institutions where we expect all of them to have alternative heating sources and have the preparations for the winter, which we expect to be hard, reasonably hard. So we want people to prepare. To come back to what we started from, how will the Rosh Hashanah in Uman be different from previous years for those people who, in spite of your recommendations, might still come? Uh, there will be additional restrictions in terms of curfew. We will keep tabs on every person. We will restrict or forbid movement through the city, both by car and both on foot. In some streets, there will be additional checkpoints. Um, as of right now, we have started, and we will continue counterintelligence measures and anti-terrorist measures. And when previously we always allowed people to trade, to sell things where people congregate, including residents of Uman. We will prohibit those kinds of events this year, completely restrict, and we will trace, we will keep tabs on what number of people will be congregated in one place in order to preclude any such development. We will convey these rules to the. We've come up with trainings. We've come up with instructions through various Jewish foundations. We've given warnings, and we've made it clear to them. We've given them all the information of how they're supposed to act, and we will try to do our best. Starting from September 19th, we will try to hold practical trainings in terms of how we will operate and how we'll work, what the rules will be for the people who will come. I hope that they will be conscious, they will be aware, and that there will be much lower numbers. But I still expect probably up to 10,000 people, and then how it'll work out in real life, well, we'll see. As of right now, we have over 1,000, about 1,100 people who have already come in, or we expect an active influx starting on September 18th, 19th. Ihor Taburets, head of the Cherkasy Oblast military administration. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you. Our next briefing will be at 12. We will be talking to Vasyl Furman, deputy head of the National Bank of